a song for you.
You're listening to Deep Purple Smoke on the Podcast. I will do one episode for each song the band recorded in the studio. However, this is a fan podcast and not band endorsed. It's more of a tribute to their long history, well beyond just the hits, and my way of giving something back to a band that has given so much to me. Let's dig in! Hello and welcome to Season 8, Episode 7. Today we're talking about the song Our Lady on Deep Purple Smoke on the Podcast. I am your host, Scott Haskin. You may know me from this show. You may know me from Uriah Heep, the Magicians Podcast, where I covered all of Uriah Heep songs. And you may know me from the Haskincast Podcast. You may know my music, my books, all that other stuff, which you can find on my website at www.scotthaskin.com. So this is an interesting track. It's our final track on the proper album. We do have a bonus track that we'll be covering in the next episode. But for today, this is the last actual album track. Now, there are two versions of it on the Roger Glover re-release of this album. And the first one is just listed as Our Lady. It's not listed as remastered or anything. The second version is listed under the bonus track section, and it's listed as remixed. So with the remixing, of course, you're going to remaster it. So I'm actually going to go off of that version for this song instead of the initial version, because that doesn't seem to be consistent with the ones that we've done already. Very weird. I don't have the booklet, so I don't know why, but that is the way it is. So that being the case, we're going to dig into this track. Now, this is, it's interesting, and I remember somewhere along the line, I had read an interview with Ian Gillan where he said, and it must have been from around the time he had left the band, because he had said he wanted to go more in the direction of writing songs like this. Now, we know that sometimes when people are put on the spot, especially under, emotion or whatever, they can say things that are things they mean. They could say things that they mean in a moment but don't mean overall, or they could say things that are cheeky or sarcastic. I mean, listen to pretty much any Ritchie Blackmore interview and try and tell whether he's being sarcastic or whether he's actually telling the truth. It's very fascinating to listen to his interviews, but you never really know if this was something he really meant or something he meant in the moment or something he was just saying sarcastically because it was in print. So there's no inflection, there's no context or anything like that. But I will say I've always loved this song. This has always been my favorite song on this album. And I'm excited to dig into it and see what I hear that I might have never heard before. So here it is, guys, by Deep Purple, Our Lady. Kind of like we heard with Lazy, definitely a long keyboard intro. I love the grit that's on there. Very, very powerful, but it's, it's pretty typical for this album. And, but it sounds really good, isolated, where you can really appreciate that sound on its own. Then the band kicks in. It's a little bit lower tempo than we've been getting on this album. And an interesting one to close with, but not uncommon for a band to close, a rock album with a slower song. I think it really works well. But then again, part of that could just be the fact that I'm very used to hearing this album in the order that it's always been in. But I do love the sound of it. I love the fact, and I don't think I realized this before, so here we are right off the bat, finding something new, that Roger comes in playing eighth notes, which is really interesting. I just thought he was playing, the root, but he's actually going bum, 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 which is, interesting for a track where, the drums are a little more calm. The overall feel is a little bit more mellow to the song. But then we get that nice little burst from Ritchie as we, again, short intro going right into vocals as we get into the first verse. It's not a difficult song. It's not really progressive. It's not intense. It's actually very simple. They're just kind of saying, here's the chord. Let's fill it in. Let's do some dynamics within that chord. And it sounds great. That's what we're getting from Richie, especially when it goes into that lay me down part. Roger kicks in with his typical sound of moving up and down the fretboard and playing very colorfully. So that adds a nice dynamic to it. And I like that he doesn't do that during this first verse. That makes this part stand out a little bit more. And those two lines are really a pre-chorus because we're about to hit the chorus, although it's incredibly simple. Probably for a chorus, probably the most simple Deep Purple chorus I can think of. But the overall sound is huge. And part of that is the mixing, part of that is recording. But I mean, what they're playing is really filling up the sound area. And I don't feel like this song is lacking for anything, even though there's not that much going on for what we've come to expect. A lot of great vocal layering going on here. I mean, we're getting the straight vocal, the harmony, then we're getting these ahs in the background. Just wonderful way to fill in the sound to make it sound a little bit more angelic, I want to say. There may be a better word for it than that, but that's what's coming to mind. And then Roger, a real standout during this part as well, just keeping a very typical Roger Glover colorful rhythm that I've really come to appreciate even more so through the podcast and really kind of listening to these songs in a more critical way than I'm used to. And it's funny. I mean, I'm listening to this song for 40 years and never realized what he was actually playing. I mean, during the chorus and this part we're about to come up to, yeah, absolutely. But, not in the opening, the way he comes in with the eighth notes. It's really, really spectacular work. And then, Richie and John just filling in the sound. Ian playing some good fills, but he's not overplaying the song at all. He's really laid back on it, just kind of, being a solid foundation on this song. And he'll get his turn to get a little crazy later, but for now, just being the solid foundation that we need him to be at this point. Yeah, I love that part. John Lord is playing through that. Really interesting progression or digression, I should say, since it's going down the scale. And then Roger, from what I'm making out, it sounds like he's actually in the background going up the scale. So it plays off of each other really, really well. I like the sound of that. And then I can't tell exactly what Richie's doing. I think he just might be playing the root chords. So it's a really interesting combination. And then, of course, a couple little fills from Ian Paice. Then we get this part where the drums all of a sudden start panning from left to right. And here I don't mind it. It actually sounds pretty good. I like the way that the toms stand out here. It's a really cool part. So to have them a little brighter in the mix. And of course, because there's nothing going on around them, there's no frequency that they're really fighting with, except for that one keyboard sound in the background, but that's on a different frequency from these toms anyway. So everything cuts through very beautifully. I love the sound of that part. And it's really unexpected that you would just have a stop right here and then a little drum sequence before coming in for the second verse. So a couple of real quiet fill-ins from Richie in the background. Not sure why those aren't a little bit more upfront because they're nice. And then we get Roger in the last half of that, then starting to, assert himself a little more from the bass rhythm that he was playing in the first half of that. I just love that, they're just always doing something different. I love how the backing vocals go up at the end there. But if you listen through that, Our Lady part, he's got the harmonies, but he's also got other backups going on. The first one goes a little bit longer in the background, and it's a really interesting dynamic. And then, of course, that last one where he goes up instead of just staying straight or going down. Very, very cool. Again, the music backing is fantastic. Steps up where it needs to from the previous portions of the song. And this is just such great writing. I mean, the mood of it is, you guys who followed me for a while know that I do love when the songs have a pleasing mood. And there's just something about the mood of this song that I've always enjoyed. I don't know that I could really define it, but there's just something about it that's always just captured me right from the first time I heard it. I love the sound of this part. But, Richie, through that last section where John's kind of taking the lead, he's settled back into the rhythm, just playing some nice stuff to thicken up the sound, keep the motion of the song going. He's not doing any fillers, not doing any, anything that's really needs a main focus because it's really just designed to be supportive. And it's nice to see when he does that. I mean, we're so used to these little fill-ins that he puts in and kind of those moments where he stands out, but sometimes it's nice to just sit back and let somebody else take the front seat a little bit. John's doing a lot of work, as I mentioned in a previous episode, doing a lot of work on this album because, I think it goes back to the situation that was going on in the band, the tension, not being in the, people not being in the room at the same time and all that. I don't know if Richie was less interested in this album or, how he was feeling about the recording process. But definitely he's letting John take more of a lead on this one. It's very simple the way the band comes back in from this keyboard break, right? Or synthesizer break, I should say. And I would imagine, I don't know if he had his ARP Odyssey by this point or not. So this could have been on a Moog. Not really sure what he was playing on this album as far as synthesizers go, because he really didn't get into synthesizers a lot, I don't think, until the next album. But he may have had one of those two already. But either way, very, very cool sound. I love that. I love the break in the song. It's not something that they did a ton, but when they do it, it seems to be very effective. And just the way everybody comes in off of that crash cymbal, just so powerful and such a huge sound. And I really dig that. mean, it's almost sensory overload, the number of different things that are going on here in this combination of sounds that we're getting with this particular mix, which really just seems so hard edged and like they were really pushing those VU meters as much as they possibly could. There's just like, I don't even know what to pay attention to because there's so many cool things happening. Love what everybody's playing individually, and I love the way that it sounds together. But I will say the vocals on this verse are extremely interesting to me. With lines like, and part of it is the pronunciation of it, right? The way that Ian sings, "I can hear your song." There's just something about that way he delivers that line really grips me. And then the line, "Offer me a ring just to show me your sincerity." Like, I really love that too. I think about, relationships I've had with people over the years, and, a ring doesn't have to be literal. It could be anything. It could be any kind of gesture of, friendship, help, whatever it might be. And I just think about different people I've known throughout my lives. And of course, this goes back to, when I was growing up in Michigan, when I used to listen to this in the beginning. There's just so many people that come to mind and so many situations that come to mind. That's a very powerful line for me. And I really like that. And now, of course, really listen to the way that they do the backing vocals for this, because I just think it sounds so amazing. So we're getting some good fill-ins from John here, and this is again where we would normally hear that from Richie. So I do have to wonder, did he just come in and do some of the songs, the most minimal rhythms that he could? Or, I'll put a little bit in here because it seemed like he was more interested in the beginning of the song where we did have a couple fill-ins from him. And now it just seems like this is John's song at this point. So I do find that interesting, and I don't necessarily know. I haven't read any documentation or anything on that except for just kind of the separation of when people were allowed to record their parts. So very interesting, though, the way the music comes out. And, I can't say that the album suffers because of it, because it came out the way it came out. It's nice to hear John doing some of these parts that we're used to hearing on guitar, to hear them on keyboard. And so it's not whether it's better or worse, it's just different. And, better or worse really comes down to personal taste. If you're a guitar player, you probably think it might have suffered from this because we're not getting as much Richie as we're used to getting. If you're a keyboard player, you might be loving every minute of this. I don't know. But I will say there is definitely a difference in balance between John and Richie, especially in this song. But, I've noticed that throughout the album as well. But I love what John's playing here. But what I want you guys to, I'm going to rewind it a couple seconds. What I want you guys to listen to is what Roger plays, because when Ian is singing the word skies, or I'm sorry, when the Oz are playing, Roger drops down and does a walk up back to where he needs to be for the next section. And I've always loved that. I didn't mention it in the last pass because there was just other things to talk about. And I knew there was another one, but just kind of listen to him as he drops down and walks back up. I just always thought that was an excellent dynamic for this song. So I'm just going to interrupt here for a second, since this isn't really a solo. I kind of hear some stuff from Richie in the background, like he's just kind of going off a little bit. I'm staying within the context of the song, certainly not the kind of solo type work that you would normally expect, but he's beefing up that rhythm that he's playing a little bit. And there's a couple points where he goes up in the register that I think are just great signal marks, for a heightened emotion a little bit coming from him. The organ is still dominant in the song and in the mix, and that's one thing to keep in mind. Maybe some of the stuff that Richie's playing is getting a little bit buried just in the sheer volume of the song, the sheer intensity of it. I don't know. I've never heard the isolated tracks for this song. So I suspect Richie may be kind of bringing a little more in this section of the song. Ian Paice certainly, going to start kind of being a little bit more, I don't want to say lively, because I don't feel like he wasn't giving it his all up to this point. But up to this point, he's had some good fills, but he's mainly been just the solid foundation that the song needs. And now it's kind of like, okay, now that we're past the story, now we can all just open up and go off a little bit. And he certainly comes in with a little more of that than he was playing in the earlier parts of the song. So I want to say it that way, because I don't dislike what he played in here. I don't think it was wrong or bad or anything by any means. So I don't want to give that impression. It was obviously very strategic. And at the end of this, it's just kind of a free for all for everyone. And John, doing some solos in between this little lick that he's playing. And the whole sound of it is just amazing. So we've got about 30 seconds left. So I'm just going to play through to the end here. Did I say 30? I'm in a minute 30. Yeah, so this goes well beyond the album version. He just kind of let the reel play until they stopped recording, and I'm so grateful he did, because there's a lot of cool stuff that was being played that we did not hear on the original album. And again, this is why I love that when I've got a song, and you guys have heard me talking about this before. John Matola and I talked about this on the I'm Alone episode about chasing that fade, and I want to go where that party was. Since I love this song so much, this is one of the ones that I've always been most curious about where it went after the fade, because it seems like the jam was going so well. I wanted more. And obviously, with what they're playing on this, it's absolutely fantastic. Just killer jam. I could listen to more of this, to be honest. But, when you're the person playing it, there's sometimes, you're in the moment, but there might be only so many things that you feel are worth playing or fit the song or, whatever. And you got to stop at some point, no matter how much you're enjoying it. So really cool that he played it out to the end. Just to kind of give you guys a little bit of a reference point, I'm actually going to go back and play the fade out from the original version, and you can hear how much actually got missed. Yeah, so in this version, which was the album version, there was about 53 or so seconds missing from what we heard in the remaster where Roger let the tape run. So there's a lot of cool stuff in that last minute that I had never heard before until this remaster came out, which is really cool. Great stuff. I'm so glad that Roger gave us both of those versions to listen to. I don't know what more I can say about the song, to be honest, except that it's just one of those that really connected with me from a mood perspective, lyrically, musically, everything about it, the atmosphere of the song, the sound of the recording, just everything really resonated with me. And like I said, this has always been from the first time I heard Who Do We Think We Are, my favorite song on the album. There was a time when it was like, oh no, Super Troopers better. But you go in those phases. But honestly, like there's just always been something about this song. And it would have been interesting to see if Ian had followed this in his own solo career, if this is indeed what he really meant when he said that he wanted to go in the direction of writing more songs like this. Because in his solo career, he went in a completely different direction. He went even more progressive. So obviously times have changed, mood changes, what you want to give to people or what you think people want from you, what's going to sell records, all that stuff. I think Ian's always been true to where he's at any given time. And while he may have wanted this in this moment, by the time he got around to forming his own band, something completely different, music trends had changed. I mean, even within a year, your taste can change, your desire can change, what you want to do can change. So many possibilities, but it would have been interesting to see if he'd have gone more in the direction of songs like this. But anyway, guys, that is our show today. I hope you have enjoyed the last proper track. We've got one more coming up for you guys in this season. The one bonus track that did not make the album. It's an interesting one. So we'll get to that in the next episode. In the meantime, guys, it is Friday. I hope that you have a fantastic weekend ahead. Enjoy every moment. Listen to some good music. Listen to some good podcasts. Do something fun. And do something for somebody else. You know what? It never hurts as long as it's something good. Anyway, you guys take care. Have a good weekend. Cheers. Thanks for listening to Deep Purple Smoke on the Podcast, a tour of the entire Deep Purple studio recordings. Please remember to give the show a rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening. Leave a comment and tell your friends. I also have a Patreon set up if you'd like to support the show. You can also write to me at smokeonthepodcast@gmail.com. I hope you enjoyed the episode and thanks for listening.